Hello and welcome. Welcome to Learn Conversational English. I'm Lula, and I am so glad you're here with us today. Really.
And I'm Benjamin. Hey, everyone. It's really great to have you here.
So, this podcast, the whole idea behind it is pretty simple, actually. We talk. We have real conversations, the kind you'd hear between two friends on a walk or over dinner or waiting for something. And the idea is that by listening to us, you kind of absorb how English actually sounds in the real world, not in a textbook, not in a classroom, just how people actually talk to each other.
Yeah, and we try not to make it feel like a lesson, It's more like you're just sitting with us, having a cup of something warm, just listening in, and maybe picking things up along the way without even noticing.
Which I love. I really love that framing. So, before we get into today's topic, I thought it might be nice, especially for people who are new to the show, if we just took a moment, a proper moment, to introduce ourselves, give you a sense of who we are, where we come from, why we're the ones talking to you about language learning.
Good call. Yeah, let's do that. You go first.
Okay, so my name is Lula. I was born in Greece, in Athens, actually, which is a wonderful city, and I'm biased, but I stand by it. And I moved to the United States when I was 4 years old, so very young. My parents decided to move the whole family over, me and my mom and dad, to start a new life here. And I have a younger sister, but she was born here in the US. So she's properly American in a way that I'm not quite, you know? She grew up here from day one. Her English is perfect, she doesn't have any kind of accent, and I love her to pieces. But there's definitely a difference between how we each arrived in this language.
That's really interesting, that difference within the same family. That you have this whole experience of landing in a new language, and she kind of just had English from the start.
It's a big difference, and we'll get into that more as we go, because it actually connects to a lot of what we're talking about today. But yeah, I came over at 4. So I technically grew up here, but Greek was my first language. English came after. And so I do have that real lived experience of arriving somewhere and just not understanding anything. And that feeling, I carry it with me, even now. It's shaped a lot of how I think about language.
Yeah, I can imagine. For me, it's a bit different. I was born here in the States. My parents are both from Scotland, actually from the same small town in Scotland, which is quite something. And they moved over before I was born. So I grew up in this kind of dual world household. Like the house felt very Scottish, the expressions my parents used, the way they talked to each other, certain foods, certain attitudes about things, certain, I don't know, rituals. Very Scottish. But I went to school here, grew up here, all my friends were American, and I sound completely American. My two younger brothers do too.
So you're kind of culturally in between, with a foot in both worlds.
Totally. And I think that's given me this interesting vantage point because I watch my parents navigate English, specifically English in an American context, which is a bit different from what they grew up with. And I saw both the funny moments and the harder moments. The moments where someone just didn't quite get what my mom was saying, where she'd have to explain an expression, or where someone would ask her to repeat herself. And you could see it in her face, just this little flicker of something. Frustration, maybe, or just a moment of feeling like an outsider.
Yeah, I know that look. I've worn it.
So we're coming from different places, but I think both perspectives matter. And together, hopefully, we make for an interesting conversation.
I really think we do. And on that note, today's topic, which is one that I care about deeply, honestly. We're talking about the fears that come with learning a new language, the things that stop people, the invisible walls, the moments where you know exactly what you want to say and you just don't say it because something holds you back. And we're going to talk about what that something is and how you actually get through it.
It's such a rich topic because it's not just about grammar or vocabulary. It's not a linguistic problem, it's a psychological one, an emotional one.
It really is. The language part, in some ways, is almost the easy bit. It's the fear that's hard. Okay, let's get into it. Part 1. What does fear actually mean here? Like, what are we talking about when we say people are afraid of learning a new language? Because fear is a big word.
It is. And I think when most people hear fear, they imagine something dramatic, a phobia, a panic attack. But that's not what this is. It's more a low-level hum, a constant background anxiety that just shapes your behavior without you necessarily noticing.
Yes, that is exactly it. It's not that you're terrified, it's more that you hesitate, you hold back. You think twice before saying something, and then you don't say it. And the moment passes, and you carry on as if it didn't happen.
Which is almost worse than a big, obvious fear, because it's so quiet, so easy to not even notice it's happening.
Completely. And I remember, this is my earliest memory of this, really. I was 4, maybe just turned 5, and it was my first week at school here. And I walked into this classroom, and there were all these kids, and they were all just talking. And I had no idea what any of them were saying, not one word, and I just froze.
Froze how? Like physically?
Kind of, yeah. I just stood there by the door. I remember it so clearly. There was a blue mat on the floor, and there were little cubby holes along one wall, and all these kids were already sitting in a circle. And the teacher came over and said something to me, probably something like, "Come in, find a seat." And I just stared at her because I didn't know what she was saying. But also, even if I had understood, I don't know what I would have done. My body just didn't know what to do next.
And that's the thing. You weren't confused in a general way. You weren't having a bad day. You were just in a language that wasn't yours yet, and your entire system kind of shut down.
Exactly. And I think that shutdown feeling, that paralysis, is what a lot of language learners experience. Even adults, even people who've been studying a language for years. The moment it becomes real, when it's a real conversation with a real person who's actually waiting for your answer, something just locks.
My mom talked about something similar actually. She speaks perfectly good English, brilliant English, but she has a very strong Scottish accent. And she said that there were times early on in shops or restaurants or on the phone trying to sort something out where the person would just blank, like they just not register what she said, even though she said it clearly, even though the words were right. And she said that blankness was one of the most disorienting feelings she'd ever had.
Because it's not a correction. It's not, "You said that wrong." It's just nothing. Like your words didn't even arrive.
And that's a different kind of fear, isn't it? That's not, I don't know the language. That's, I used the language correctly and it still didn't work. And I think that one might actually be harder to deal with than making a mistake, because at least with a mistake, you have something to fix.
With the blank look, you don't even know where to start.
I remember asking my mom once, I must have been 8 or 9, does it bother you when people don't understand you? And she paused and she said, it used to. And just that phrase, it used to. I think about it all the time because it implies the whole arc that there was a period when it hurt and then there was a period when it didn't anymore. And somewhere in between, something shifted.
That's that's actually the journey we're talking about today. The journey from "it bothers me" to "it used to."
Yeah, and I think the first step in that journey is just naming the fear, because a lot of people don't even realize they're afraid. They just think they're not ready yet. They think they need to know more vocabulary, do more grammar exercises, watch more videos. But really, they're just scared. And if you don't name that, you can't address it.
Totally. And I think there are a few distinct kinds of fear that are worth naming separately because they feel different and they respond to different things. So I'd say the main ones are the fear of making mistakes, the fear of not being understood, and the fear of sounding foreign, of your accent marking you out.
And they can layer on top of each other, which is what makes it so hard. Like you might be afraid of making a mistake because you're afraid that a mistake will make you sound foreign, and sounding foreign will mean people won't understand you. It's a loop, a closed loop.
And you can't find the door. From the inside, it just feels like walls in every direction.
So let's take each one and really dig in. Start with the biggest one.
The biggest one, let's go. The fear of making mistakes. I honestly think this is the number one thing stopping language learners everywhere, in every language. It's just everywhere.
And it makes sense that it would be. Like, we're trained from childhood to think mistakes are bad. In school, in work, in so many areas of life. A mistake means you did something wrong, and doing something wrong has consequences. So the instinct to avoid them is incredibly strong.
And then you come to language learning, and the whole mechanism of it is built on making mistakes. You almost can't get better without them, which puts you in this impossible position where the thing you're most afraid of is also the main thing that would help you.
It's a catch-22, completely.
So I have a story about this, a personal one, and it's a bit embarrassing, but it's also funny now. So, okay. I was maybe 6 or 7. We were in class and we were talking about animals. And I wanted to say that a particular animal was like hairy, covered in hair. And I used a word that in Greek sounds a bit similar to a word in English. And I thought they must mean the same thing. And they very much did not.
Oh no. Oh no, Lula.
The whole class laughed, like really laughed. And I stood there completely confused. I had no idea what was funny, none. And the teacher, to her credit, came over very calmly and whispered to me what I'd actually said. And I went so red. And I went home that day and told my mom I was never going to speak English again.
You actually said that?
Word for word, I am never speaking English again. Very dramatic. I was 6.
What did your mom say?
She said, just say the word, even if it's wrong, and we'll fix it after. And that became like a rule in our house, a philosophy almost. Just say the word, even if it's wrong, because saying nothing doesn't teach you anything, and the word that comes out wrong today is the word that comes out right tomorrow.
That's such a good mantra, and it puts the emphasis in the right place, on the attempt, not the outcome.
Exactly. The attempt is the whole thing. The fixin' comes later, almost as a bonus.
I think about my dad with this a lot because my dad has this very Scottish sense of humor. Very dry, and when he first moved here, some of his jokes just didn't land because the cultural context was different. And he'd tell a joke and there'd be this silence, and he'd have to explain it, which is the death of any joke.
Oh, that's painful.
But he never stopped. He just kept trying the jokes, kept adjusting them. And eventually, maybe a year in, maybe 2, his timing just clicked into an American context. And now he's one of the funniest people I know, and you'd never know that it wasn't always like that.
That's such a good example, because humor is genuinely one of the hardest things to translate. It's not just vocabulary, it's rhythm, timing, cultural reference, shared assumptions. If you can get good at being funny in a second language, you've really arrived.
He'd say he's still working on it, but we all think he's hilarious.
The other thing my dad did, and I mentioned this earlier, but I want to come back to it, was narrating his day out loud to himself. He'd be doing things around the house and he'd just talk himself through it. I'm putting the kettle on, now I'm looking for the tea bags. The tea bags are in the cupboard next to the, what is that cabinet called? And he'd stop and look it up, just mid narration.
Low stakes practice. In private, building the muscle.
Exactly. No audience, no risk, no one to look at him funny if he said something wrong. And over time, the private narration starts to feel natural. And then the public speaking feels a bit less terrifying because your brain has already done it 1,000 times.
I want to talk about this shame piece though, because I think the fear of making mistakes is really underneath it a fear of being seen as less intelligent or less capable. And that's a hard thing to shake.
It really is. Because when you make a mistake in a second language, it can feel like it's exposing something, like it's telling the world you don't fully belong here, which is not true, but it can feel that way.
And I think native speakers sometimes forget how much they contribute to that feeling. Like you can respond to someone's mistake in a way that helps, correcting gently or just moving on, or you can respond in a way that makes them feel small, even if you don't mean to.
And a look is enough. You don't have to say anything, just a look of slight confusion or impatience, or even if it's just that someone glances at their phone while you're searching for a word. That's enough to make you want to stop talking.
Which is why the self-defeating loop is so hard to break, because you stop trying, you get less practice, you make more mistakes, you feel worse about it, you stop trying more, and around it goes.
And the exit from that loop is the same every time. You just say the word, even if it's wrong, even if someone looks at you funny, even if you have to try 3 times, say it. Because every attempt is practice, and practice is the only thing that actually works. And I think there's a perfectionism element. Like, some people won't speak until they feel ready, until their vocabulary's big enough, their grammar's solid enough, their confidence high enough. And that day never comes because the confidence doesn't come before the practice. It comes from the practice.
You can't think your way to fluency. You have to talk your way there.
Exactly. And the thing is, the people around you, the native speakers you're so afraid of embarrassing yourself in front of, most of them are not keeping score. Most of them are just trying to communicate. They're not waiting for you to make a mistake so they can judge you. They're just people trying to communicate, same as you.
And the ones who do judge, they exist, unfortunately, but they say more about themselves than they do about you. All right, let's talk about the next one, the fear of not being understood. I think this one might actually hurt more than the mistakes one. Because with a mistake, you still communicated something. With not being understood, the connection just breaks.
It's like speaking into a void, and there's a particular kind of helplessness in it. Because you did the thing, you found the words, you said them, you put them out there, and they didn't land.
My mom had this phrase she used. She said the second attempt is always worse. Because by the time you're saying it again, you're already nervous. You're watching their face for signs. You're probably rushing a bit, trying to get through it faster, which actually makes you harder to understand.
Self-fulfilling. You try to fix it and you make it worse.
And then sometimes there's a third attempt, and by then you just want the conversation to be over.
I went through a phase in secondary school, maybe 14, 15, where I just went quiet, deliberately quiet. I would sit in group conversations and just listen, nod along, react to things without contributing, because it felt safer than risking not being understood.
And from the outside, people might have thought you were just shy, or maybe very thoughtful, but really you were.
Protecting myself. Yeah. And my sister, my younger sister, the one who was born here, she'd sometimes speak for me in group situations. Like, I'd start to say something and trail off, and she'd finish it. And it was so kind of her. She meant it completely well, but it meant I wasn't practicing. I was letting her carry me.
And she probably had no idea.
She had absolutely no idea. She was just being a good sister. But looking back, I needed to fall in my face a few times. I needed to have the conversation go wrong and find my way back from it. And because she was always there to catch me, I never built that muscle.
There's something about that, about being shielded from the discomfort that actually slows the learning down, even though it feels helpful in the moment.
Completely. And I'm not blaming her at all, but I think that's a pattern worth naming. Because sometimes the kindest thing someone can do for a language learner is wait, just wait. Let them get there in their own time. Don't finish the sentence for them.
I remember the restaurant moment with my mom. She'd ordered, and the waiter looked confused. And she said it again, and he still looked uncertain. And my dad just said it slightly differently, and the waiter immediately went, "Oh, of course." And I saw my mom's face just drop for a half second. And then she smiled, and it was fine. But that half second, I've never forgotten it.
Because she wasn't wrong. She said the right thing. She just said it with a different accent. And someone else got the credit for the communication.
Yeah, and I don't think the waiter was trying to make her feel bad. I don't think he even noticed. But the impact was real, regardless of the intent. And I think that's something native speakers really need to understand. You don't have to be unkind to cause that feeling.
And that's where I think the responsibility is shared. It's not all on the language learner to make themselves understood. Native speakers have a role to play too. A bit more patience, a bit more effort, not jumping to the easiest interpretation.
And not switching to a simpler register either. Like some people, when they realize someone is non-native, they start speaking to them like a child. And that's well-intentioned maybe, but it's also a bit patronizing.
Very patronizing and unnecessary. The person doesn't need simpler words, they need a bit more time.
So what's the practical advice for the person who's on the learning end of this?
I think say it. And if they don't understand, say it differently. Not louder. That's a classic mistake, speaking louder as if volume is the problem. But differently. try a different word, try a shorter sentence. And if all else fails, it is completely okay to say, I'm still learning. Could you bear with me? That sentence right there, I'm still learning, it's one of the most powerful things you can say because it names the situation, it asks for patience, and it gives the other person something to work with.
And most people will respond to that really warmly because it's honest. And there's something about someone being upfront about their vulnerability that makes you want to help them.
It changes the dynamic. Instead of, this person isn't communicating clearly and I don't know why, it's, this person is working hard and I'd like to be part of that. It's a completely different interaction.
And it takes courage to say, I'm still learning, because in some ways it feels like admitting weakness, but it's actually the opposite. It's an act of self-possession.
It really is. Okay, part 4.
Part 4, the deep one. So, accents, the fear of sounding foreign. This is the one I find most interesting because I think it goes the deepest. It's not really about communication anymore, it's about identity.
And it carries more shame than the others, I think, because embedded in I'm afraid of sounding foreign is this idea that sounding foreign is a problem, that the goal is to sound native. And I want to question that premise pretty hard.
Same, because I think it's worth asking, whose idea was that? Who decided that the goal of learning a language is to pass as a native speaker? Because if that's the goal, almost everyone will fail, and they'll feel like failures when they haven't failed at anything.
The goal is to communicate. The goal is to connect with people. And you can do that with an accent. You can do it beautifully with an accent. All you can't do it with is silence.
Right, and yet the fear of sounding foreign stops so many people from speaking at all. So it becomes this self-defeating thing again. The fear of the accent is worse than the accent itself.
And I think a lot of it comes from early experiences. Moments when someone laughed or looked surprised or made a comment, and those moments stick.
My parents' accents are, they're wonderful. My mom in particular has this very musical Scottish lilt. And when I hear it, it's home, it's safety, it's every memory I have of being a child and everything being okay.
That's such a lovely way to put it.
And my brothers, who sound completely American, they do impressions of my parents sometimes, affectionate ones, family ones, and my parents always laugh along because they know their accents are part of who they are and they're proud of that. They never tried to change them. They never felt like the accent was something to be fixed.
And that ease, that pride, I think it's something you can learn even if you didn't grow up with it.
Do you have an accent still?
A little. It comes out when I'm tired, or when I'm talking about something I feel strongly about, or when I'm on the phone with my mom. That's a big one. I just immediately start sounding more Greek. And for a long time, I was self-conscious about that. I'd try to pull it back, sound more neutral.
And now?
And now I love it, actually, when it comes out, because it's part of me. It's a trace of Athens. It's my parents, my grandmother, our kitchen, the food, the noise, the warmth. It's all of that encoded in how I say certain words, and I don't want to erase that.
I think that's such a healthy place to get to. And I think it's worth saying a lot of people's first language actually makes their second language sound beautiful. Like a French person speaking English often sounds incredible. A Spanish person speaking English, Japanese, Italian, Greek, there's a musicality to it that native English speakers often don't have.
It's true, and I think native speakers sometimes forget that because they're so used to their own sound that they treat anything different as a deviation. But different isn't worse.
There's also something important about the fact that the world has a huge number of English speakers for whom English is a second language. Like, English belongs to all of them too, not just the people who grew up with it.
Completely. English is everybody's language now. It's a shared resource, and there's room in it for every accent.
The Greek community you grew up around, you mentioned the older generation kept their accents.
Yeah, my parents' friends, my grandparents, when they visited, they all had strong Greek accents. And they've been in the US for years, decades, and they spoke English with their Greek accents, and nobody in our community thought twice about it. It was just who they were.
And you, your generation, you blended in more, you adapted.
We did. And I want to be clear, neither approach is wrong. My grandparents' way is valid. My way is valid. You don't have to choose between your heritage and your new home. You can carry both. You can be fully Greek and fully American. You can be fluent in English and still sound a little bit like where you came from. These things are not in conflict.
And I think that's the message I want anyone listening to take away from this section. Your accent is not a problem to be solved. It's information about who you are. And that's something to be held on to, not sanded down.
Very well put. Okay, let's get practical. Part 5, the part I've been excited about. What do you actually do? What are the real, practical, today, not someday things you can do to get through the fear?
And some of these we've touched on, but I want to bring them all together.
So, number 1, and I have to say this because we're a podcast and it's true, listen to podcasts in the language you're learning. Just listen. Even if you don't understand everything, even if whole chunks go over your head, just let the sound of the language wash over you. Because your brain is doing work even when it doesn't feel like it. It's picking up rhythm, melody, the music of the language.
And specifically, find conversational podcasts, not lectures, not news shows. Those have a different register. Find people just talking, like us, because the English people speak at a dinner table is very different from the English people use in a business presentation. And if you're learning conversational English, you need to hear conversational English.
Exactly. And real conversation has all these things that textbooks strip out. The pauses, the self-corrections, the and you know and sort of, the incomplete sentences where someone changes their mind halfway through. All of that is language, real language.
TV shows with subtitles. We talked about this a bit, but I want to be specific. Start with subtitles in your own language. Just follow along, enjoy the show, get used to hearing the target language in the background. Then switch to subtitles in the language you're learning. Then try without any subtitles, and don't rush through these stages. Stay in each one until it feels easy.
And the choice of show matters. Pick something you actually enjoy. Don't watch something boring just because it's educational. You want to watch it again and again naturally because you like it. That repetition is where the learning really happens.
Also, sitcoms are great for English because they're full of everyday language, colloquialisms, expressions, social dynamics, all packaged in 20-minute episodes with clear situations. You understand so much from context.
Speak aloud to yourself. This one sounds a bit strange, but it is genuinely one of the most effective things you can do. You're practicing the physical act of producing the language, making the sounds, finding the words, forming the sentences, in a space where there are zero consequences. You make a mistake, you just say it again. No one heard, no one cares, but your brain is learning.
And you don't have to narrate your entire day, like my dad did, although that works. You can just pick a topic. Pretend you're explaining something to a friend. Tell yourself what you did yesterday. Describe a film you saw. Just talk out loud in the language.
Find a language partner, someone to practice with. This can be someone else who's learning, which takes the pressure off because you're both in the same boat, or a native speaker who's patient. And you can find these online now really easily. There are apps specifically for this, language exchange communities.
And the conversations don't have to be deep or meaningful. You can talk about the weather, what you had for lunch, a film, a song you like. It doesn't matter what you talk about. The point is just to be in the act of talking, of producing the language in real time with another real person.
The mistake journal. I love this one. Every time you make a mistake, especially a funny one, an embarrassing one, a memorable one, write it down, just a few words, what you meant to say, what you actually said, and then a week later, a month later, you go back and read it, and you'll be amazed at two things. 1, how funny it is, and 2, how much better you've gotten in the meantime.
You turn the embarrassment into a record of progress. That's clever.
And it really shifts how you feel about mistakes in real time, because if a mistake happens and part of your brain immediately goes, great, that's going in the journal, it's hard to also feel crushed by it. It becomes material, data, comedy.
Copy phrases. Find things people say in shows, in songs, in podcasts, and use them. Try them out in real conversations. Sometimes they'll feel awkward, sometimes you'll use them at the wrong moment, and people will look a bit confused. But sometimes they'll land perfectly and you'll feel brilliant.
And this is how native speakers build their range too. We're all, to some extent, assembling language from pieces we've heard before. That's not cheating. That's how language works.
And the most important one, maybe the most important one on the whole list.
Celebrate tiny wins.
Please, please do this.
Because language learners are so focused on where they're going that they don't notice where they've been. And every tiny thing deserves a moment. You understood a joke. That's huge. You ordered food and didn't have to repeat yourself. Brilliant. You read a sign and understood it without translating in your head. Passive. You had a thought in the new language before your first language. Life changing.
My mom, the restaurant story. She had this moment, it must have been about 16, where she ordered a full meal, starter, main, dessert. And she asked about the soup of the day and had a little chat with the waiter about it. And he was totally engaged, totally natural, no confusion at all. And she came back to the table and she just had this look on her face, like quiet joy. And she didn't make a big deal of it. But later that night, she mentioned it to my dad. She said, he understood everything I said. Just like that. Simple. And my dad smiled and said, he always could.
That's gonna make me emotional. That's so beautiful.
And it was just ordering soup, but it represented everything. Every conversation that hadn't gone smoothly. Every, sorry, and could you repeat that? Every moment of feeling like an outsider. All of it redeemed by soup.
I had a moment like that too. I was 14, and there was this American sitcom I loved. I'd watched it probably 20 times, always with subtitles. And one evening, I sat down to watch it, and I just forgot to put the subtitles on. And I was watching, and I was fine. I was just watching. And it was at the end of the episode that I realized I'd watched the whole thing without a single subtitle, and I'd understood everything. Every line, every joke, every throwaway reference. And I cried, just a little, quietly.
14-year-old Lula crying over a sitcom because she finally understood it.
In the absolute best way. It was a massive deal. And I think you have to let it be a massive deal, because no one's going to throw you a party for understanding a sitcom, but inside, it's a party, and you deserve to have it.
That's the whole thing. You have to be your own celebration. You have to notice and you have to acknowledge it. And you have to let yourself feel good about it because the wins are real, even if they look small from the outside. One more thing I'd add, and this might sound simple, but I think it's underrated, is to change the language on your phone or your computer or your social media. Just shift the environment you're in digitally because you look at your phone 50 times a day. If it's in the language you're learning, you're passively absorbing words and phrases constantly without even trying.
That's so good. And you can make it as gradual as you want. Change one app first, change the settings on one social media, and then slowly expand it until one day you realize you haven't thought in your first language for 3 hours, which is a very strange feeling, actually, but a good one.
And read, even just a little, a short article, a caption, a few paragraphs of something you're interested in. Reading and listening together build your understanding so much faster than either one alone.
Because reading gives you the written form of the word and listening gives you the sound of it. And when those two things connect in your brain, things start to click really fast. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Really covered it.
We really have. This has been such a good conversation.
Should we round off?
Let's round off.
Okay, so thank you. That's the first thing and the most important thing. Thank you genuinely for spending time with us today, for choosing to sit with us for however long this has been. A while, a good while.
And I want to say something specific to anyone who's been listening in a second language, or a third, or a fourth, in which case you are an absolute hero and we bow to you.
Completely.
But seriously, what you're doing right now is genuinely brave. You chose to spend time with people talking at natural speed in a language that isn't your native one, and you stayed with it. Maybe you understood everything. Maybe some bits flew past you. Both of those are fine. Both of those are normal. The fact that you're here is what matters.
And I know progress can feel slow. It can feel invisible, like you've been working at this for months and you're still not where you want to be. And sometimes you wonder if you're getting better at all. You are, I promise. The progress is there even when you can't see it. Every listen counts, every episode counts, every conversation, even the ones that go sideways, counts.
Be patient with yourself. That's the message. Be patient with yourself the way you'd be patient with a friend who was trying something hard. Because you wouldn't say to a friend, you should know this by now. You'd say, you're doing great, keep going. So say that to yourself.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep going. It helps the show find more people who might really need to hear this stuff. So if you're listening on whatever platform, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and you'll never miss an episode.
We'd love to have you back. Until next time.
Take care of yourselves. Keep talking, keep trying, even when it's hard.
Especially when it's hard.
Bye for now.
See you next time.